right? And matter of fact, we will see. Sometimes he can't even finish the verse because finishing the verse would contradict what he's saying. So are we ready to take a look at some of his other arguments?
Sure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got more Zakir Naik. More Dr. Zakir Naik coming your way.
And there's not a single verse anywhere in the gospel which says that Jesus, peace be upon him, was resurrected. In fact, if you read...
Mike, let me pause right there. Isn't that false? It says not, Matthew 27, doesn't it say, and after his resurrection, then the saints appeared to those in Jerusalem? And so doesn't it use the word resurrection there?
It sure does.
So he just said there isn't a matter of fact, it's on the screen. Not a single verse in any of the Gospels mention that Jesus was resurrected. Everyone can look at it, Matthew 27:53. But it's an amazing situation in that you could actually put the verse right in front of Zakir Naik's fans and say, look, it says resurrected right here. Here's the verse. Here's the chapter. Here's the book. Here's the chapter. Here's the verse. And it will be, nope, Zakir Naik says it's not there. It's like, what is wrong? What is wrong with you? So so anyway, he's just wrong here. But all right, we ready to go on? Let's finish this clip.
If you remember the story, that after the alleged crucifixion, when the disciples, they met in the upper room, Jesus, peace be upon him, he comes. It's mentioned in the Gospel of Luke, chapter number 24, verse number 36. He comes and he says to the disciple, Shalom, in Hebrew, which means peace unto you. Next verse, Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verse 37, says, but they were terrified and affrighted and supposed him to be a spirit. I'm asking a question. Why did the disciples think Jesus, peace be upon him, to be a spirit? Did Jesus look like a spirit? And when I asked this question to the Christians, all of them said no. And they are right. Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, did not look like a spirit when he comes to the upper room after the alleged crucifixion. So why did they think that he was a spirit? The reason is because they had heard from hearsay that the Master Jesus, peace be upon him, was put on the cross. They had learned from hearsay that he had given up the ghost, that he had died. They had learned from hearsay that he was dead and buried in the grave for 3 days. Hearsay. You know why? Because they were not eyewitnesses. According to Mark, Gospel of Mark, chapter number 14, verse number 50, it says that all of them forsook him and fled. In the most crucial juncture in the life of Jesus, peace be upon him, when he required them the most, all the disciples, 100%, all of them, according to Mark, chapter 14, verse 50, they forsook him and fled. Who says that? Not Dr. Zakir Naik, Gospel of Mark, chapter 14, verse number 50. All of them forsook him. So it was from hearsay. Therefore they think and they thought that he was a spirit. But Jesus, peace be upon him, to clarify that out, it's mentioned in the next two verses. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter number 24, verse number 39 and 40, Jesus, peace be upon him, says that, behold my hands and feet. It is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit has no flesh and bone, as you see me have. And saying so, he shows them his hands and feet. He tells them, behold my hands and feet. It is I myself. What has happened to you? It is me, your Lord and Master Jesus, peace be upon him. Why are you affrighted?
Hey, I have to point out, he just called Jesus their Lord.
It is I myself. What has happened to you? It is me, your Lord and Master
Lord
Jesus,
and Master.
peace be upon him. Why are you affrighted? Handle me and see. Behold my hands and feet, for a spirit has no flesh and bones. What was he trying to prove by showing his hands and feet? Was he trying to prove that he was resurrected? Was he trying to prove that he was a spirit? He was trying to prove that he was not a spirit. He was not resurrected.
All right, so given Zakir Naik's earlier completely inaccurate claims that resurrection in the Bible means you come back as a spirit, not resurrection of the body, now he points out that Jesus didn't return as a spirit. He was physical, he had a body, and therefore he's not resurrected. Now, his next clip is going to be about this exact because Zakir Naik is saying, according to the Bible, he said there's, according to the Gospels, not according to whether you reject the Gospels or not, according to the Gospels, there were no eyewitnesses among the apostles of Jesus' crucifixion. So is that correct?
It's not. In fact, in Mark, it does say in Mark 14 that they all fled at his arrest, but it also says just a few verses later that Peter followed him at a distance into the courtyard of the high priest. So he was there because they wanted to see what the outcome was going to be. And him going into the courtyard is in all four Gospels. It's not just in Mark. It's in all four Gospels that Peter followed and was in the courtyard. And in fact, in John, it says there was another disciple. It doesn't name that disciple. It doesn't even say it was the beloved disciple. It just says another disciple was there, and that disciple knew the high priest. So you have that, where he's there while the trial is going on. And then you've got Mark saying that Simon of Cyrene carried Jesus' cross, and his sons are Alexander and Rufus, which many commentators say, well, they mentioned this because the readers of Mark knew Alexander and Rufus, and so they knew this story firsthand about Simon of Cyrene, so he would have been the eyewitness reporting it. And then you've got at the crucifixion, you have Mark reporting that and saying that Mary Magdalene was there, and let's see, who else was there? Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, Salome is there, so Mark reports that. And then Mark reports that Joseph of Arimathea buried the body of Jesus. And you have Mark also reporting that at the burial you have Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joseph who was there. And then at the empty tomb, Mark reports that you have Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome who are there. So he's naming people who were with him the whole way from the arrest all the way up until the empty tomb, who were witnesses of these things that he is reporting. So, I mean, this is just really, it is, as you said, it is a clumsy naivete, or he is deliberately trying to deceive his audience members.
Yeah, and so notice, in the sense that he's saying hearsay, right? So if we're going with the Gospels, you've got John and a bunch of other people there, because you have that in the Gospel of John. But you've got a bunch of other people there. You've got women. You've got all kinds of people. And in the sense that he's saying hearsay, I mean, pretty much everything from history is hearsay, right? It's old people. I saw this, and I saw that.
The Quran would be hearsay too, right?
Yep.
In that sense, it's hearsay in the same sense that he's saying the Gospels are.
Yeah, Muslims heard it from Muhammad, right? Who heard it from Gabriel, or was written on him, but they heard it from Muhammad. Muhammad said it, they memorized it, they passed it on, they eventually write parts of it down and eventually collect it. The hadiths are, I heard it from so-and-so, who 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 heard it from so-and-so. But what Zakir Naik is doing is, it's hearsay, and trying to cast doubt on the event itself. So they don't really know what's going on, but Jesus appears to them. And so they don't know whether he was dead or not. They just heard it from someone. And the hilarious part, it was a public event. A ton of people saw Jesus crucified. A ton of people saw him taken down from the cross and so on. So this is a public event. All right, let's go ahead and let him finish up this passage for us.
Next two verses. Gospel of Luke, chapter number 24, verse number 41 to 42. It says that they were overjoyed and they wondered. They thought he's dead, and now they're happy that the Lord and Master is alive, physical, with flesh and bones in front of them. They're happy. Jesus, peace be upon him, yet to confirm them, says that, do you have any meat here? And they gave him a piece of broiled fish and honeycomb. And he took it and he ate before them. To prove what? That he was resurrected.
Sound effects.
To prove that he was spirit. To prove that he was the physical body.
Picture of fish.
He ate and he chewed in front of them a piece of broiled fish and honeycomb to prove that he was not resurrected. He was not a spirit, but he was in flesh and bones, a physical body.
And so it's awesome there. Zakir Naik saying again, so he ate to show them that he's not a spirit, which is hilarious because at any other time, interacting with people, we'd be saying, hey, Jesus didn't just come back as a ghost. He was resurrected. That's why he had a physical body. And Zakir Naik's agreeing with us, but he doesn't realize that he probably does realize it, that he completely twisted the facts about resurrection. So what are your thoughts on using this passage?
Don't use it. I mean, because, as you mentioned a few moments ago, when you have the angels of the Lord, the three of them that come and meet with Abram, and it's a theophany, it's an appearance of God at that point. It takes on physical form. Abram fixes a meal for them, and they ate. So are you going to say then, according to the biblical account, that Genesis thinks that God is a human, or what's he going to argue with that? It's just this is really getting kind of crazy the way he's just. I don't know. I guess he's just making some of the stuff up as he goes along, it's really a poor handling of the text.
Yeah. No, he's actually copying his mentor Ahmed Deedat.
Well, yeah. He was poor handle of I'll tell you what. I'm just going to take. It seems like he is really guilty of the cherry picking fallacy, which, as a philosopher, you know exactly what that is. It is when you take some specific item or detail from a text and draw a conclusion from that, while ignoring relevant details that would show that your conclusions are false and that they lead to a different conclusion. He's really guilty of the cherry picking fallacy. It'd be like me taking Surah 19 verse 33 out of the Quran, where Jesus is speaking in the cradle and says,
peace on me the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I'll be raised.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, see, that's referring to the Gospels that talk about the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus. See, you've just confirmed the Gospels. And they'd say, well, of course not. You got to read the rest of the Quran. Like Surah 4 verses 156, 157. It says God only made it appear. So this must be referring, Surah 19 must be referring to a future event. Some sort where Jesus dies and is raised. It's not referring to him being crucified and rising from the dead. Mike, you'd be cherry picking, and I would be if I quoted that verse to say it is confirming the Gospels. But that is exactly the kind of thing that Zakir Naik is doing here with his cherry picking, only he's doing worse. Mm-hmm. He's ignoring details that just appear verses later. We're not talking about a totally different surah. We're talking about just go to a few verses later or earlier to disprove this very interpretation. What seems to lead me to believe this is not a clumsy naivete on this part.
You're talking about cherry picking, right? So this is the passage, ladies and gentlemen, that Zakir Naik quotes. So now while they were telling these things, Jesus himself suddenly stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be to you." But they were startled and frightened and thought that they were seeing a spirit. So they thought they were seeing a spirit. Why would they think they're seeing a spirit? Well, because they knew Jesus was dead. And so if Jesus is appearing to them, I mean, the same thing. If my grandma dies and then I see my grandma all of a sudden talking to me, I'm going to think, is it a ghost? Right? And so Jesus is convincing them that he's not just a spirit, not just a ghost. He's been raised from the dead. So then he shows them his hands and so on. He eats something in front of them. Verse 42 says they served him a piece of broiled fish. So Zakir Naik is saying, you see there, Jesus is trying to show them that he's still alive and hasn't been raised from the dead. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying, that this passage is saying, that according to the Bible, Jesus did not die and did not rise from the dead. That's the point Jesus is making. This is why we say cherry picking. Look at what happens right after this. I mean, literally the very next paragraph. Now he said to them, "These are my words which I spoke to you while I was still with you, that all the things that are written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled." Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures, and he said to them, "So it is written that the Christ would suffer and rise from the dead on the third day." This is a couple of verses after the passage that Zakir Naik quotes to show that Jesus is telling them, Jesus is standing there showing them that I didn't die. The only possible way Zakir Naik is not deliberately deceiving his audience is if he just read that little part of Luke 24 and didn't look at anything else in the entire chapter or the rest of the book apart from the things he quoted. But can we agree that if he actually read this chapter and portrayed it as Jesus claiming that he hasn't died, that Zakir Naik is just being a deliberate deceiver?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm hesitant to say something like that because you don't know a person's heart. But yeah, I mean, he's either taking, he looks, and here's what other Muslim apologists have said, and he's just repeating their arguments without checking it out himself, without actually doing a serious reading of the text himself, which just makes him careless. All right. Or the other thing is, as you've said, he has read the text and he's leaving out the relevant details, and he is involved in deliberate attempts to deceive his audience. Neither of them are attractive. You wouldn't trust a person if they are recklessly naive or a deceiver. Neither of them are worthy of our trust.